Hey everyone, welcome to the Retail Redefined podcast, a podcast that is all about retail, design, and the future of it. And I'm your host, Chriselle. On today's episode, we are going to be talking about the fusion of hospitality and retail with two of our principals here at RDC, Sean Slater, who you may remember from episode 3 when we were talking about dying shopping malls, and Jackson Thilenius, who is our interior design principal. Today's conversation was really great and productive because we were able to explore a number of different facets that have been influencing both hospitality and retail and how they have been borrowing from each other in the last 10, 20 years and where that's going to be going. We talk about, some great experiences in retail and hospitality that we have enjoyed. We talk about tech and how AI is going to be affecting us and how true luxury isn't going to be the most, technologically advanced experience, but it'll actually be one where you are able to disconnect and really unplug. So it was just a great conversation. We touched on a lot of different ideas and were able to talk about a lot of specific instances that we felt were memorable in a good way. And I will be linking to all of those in the show notes. So without further ado, I hope you enjoy and stay tuned. Hi, Sean. Hi, Jackson. Thank you so much for being on the show today.
Hi, Chriselle.
Hello, Chriselle. Thank you for having us.
Yeah, I'm really excited because, Sean, I know this is your second time here on the podcast, but Jackson, this is your first time, and it's really exciting to finally have you, on behalf of the interiors team, being on the show and talking a little bit about hospitality.
No, it's great. I'm glad I could finally catch up with you. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to this. So, since we've talked with Sean previously, and this is Jackson's first time, why don't you give a little bit of an introduction to what you're doing here, and a little bit more on the interiors team?
Sure. No, I'd be happy to. We've always had an interiors component here at the office, but the reality is that the more we diversify and the more that the services include an architectural component infused with an interiors component, the more we've been able to expand our product line and our services. So for me, I've been tasked with growing a team that can help facilitate that as well as grow into other areas of the industry, including hospitality.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, that is great. And speaking of hospitality, so today's episode, we're kind of talking about the fusion of hospitality and retail. And, first things first, why don't you guys let us know where you have been that you feel would embody the essence of hospitality?
So I'll take that one.
You're going to take the best one?
No, you can go second. I always think about the Chicago Athletic Association Hotel, and Jackson lived in Chicago for a while, and whenever I go to Chicago and we have a lot of clients there, that's the best place to meet because you don't really know, you don't feel like you're meeting in the lobby of a hotel.
Okay.
You also don't know if you're meeting in a restaurant or a bar or a library or a game room or some other retail space. And the interesting thing that I've observed in that location, in that, let's call it the lobby space, is people doing all sorts of different things, including shopping online. So, I can't think of a better place to actually do online shopping than in a lively library type setting, warm mahogany woods. There's always at least one fire, usually 2 fire, and the fireplace is going. And it's just incredibly comfortable. And it's all about service, and it's all about people, sort of waiting on you, but then also people watching, which is why we go, largely why we go out in the first place these days, is to sort of get a look at get a gander at some other people. So that's kind of the one that I go back to. And I think that the industry's moved that direction in a lot of ways. Jackson obviously has done a lot of hospitality. You can talk about that.
No, I completely agree. That's one of my favorites. I spent a lot of time at that hotel, both entertaining and just having fun. So I'm going to go a little off topic, maybe. I don't know. I went to Tiffany's recently.
Okay.
For Valentine's Day.
Yes.
And they've got hospitality right. That might be an unusual answer for this, but honestly, I haven't been in Tiffany's in years and years.
I have breakfast there often.
And I wasn't quite sure what I was looking for. Just
Yeah.
wanted to go in. I know you can't lose when you walk out with that beautiful bag.
Of course.
So there's that piece of it, right?
Uh-huh.
But the idea of walking in and then being paired immediately with a salesperson that didn't feel pressured. I was allowed to browse. They didn't pressure sell me at any point. So they actually became sort of my partner in the shopping experience. Asked who I was buying for, what I was looking for, price range. There was no sort of judgment associated with the fact that I couldn't afford a $10,000 necklace, which I was looking at the time. They had all the technology to provide all the options for me that I wanted if there wasn't anything in the case. And it was just so beautifully presented. I had total engagement with this salesperson and felt like I was being treated just as special as anyone else in that store that day. And then I was walked out and the door was open for me. And so it was just a memorable, wonderful experience that I'll never forget. And I think for me, that's what hospitality is all about. It's, whether it's retail or it's a hotel, it's about the experience and what you walk away with in your memories.
Yeah.
It's really intangible, isn't it? I mean, somebody said at one of the conferences I went to, talking specifically about millennials, they can smell if they're being sold something from a mile off and will go the opposite direction.
100%.
So you were just being treated.
Yeah.
And like a person, but a valuable person, and they, you didn't get this sort of overwhelming, well, are you ready to buy now? You ready to buy now? And I think that it's hospitality is about just being treated like a person and not being sort of stereotyped or cast as someone who I need you to buy something for you to justify your existence. And I think that goes along with everything we're going to talk about.
Yeah, I think speaking to Tiffany's specifically, especially when you're buying jewelry, there's definitely I feel like there's already pressure when you walk in the store because they want to make that commission.
Right. And that was sort of, for me, that was the surprising piece, right? Because I hadn't been in so long and I sort of was going in with a certain expectation.
Yeah, of
and
course.
They stripped that away, which was amazing. You're exactly right. It's I think it's breaking down those expectations and providing this wonderful service that isn't pressure filled.
Yeah. That's a
I
great.
could have hung out there all day. I mean, they just make yourself comfortable.
Yeah.
Enjoy Tiffany's.
That's awesome. No, both of your guys' examples they sound like really good examples. And funny enough, kind of flipping from your backgrounds. So I thought that was interesting too.
Interesting.
Okay, so now that we've kind of talked about that, why don't we talk a little bit more on how hospitality has influenced, our shopping malls specifically? What is coming out now that we're just now starting to see as trending? Like, for example, I just read a headline today. And some shopping mall in Texas is going to be converted into a mixed use with a ton of residential. So I don't know. What if?
Yeah, well, I mean, we've talked about this before, but when I started designing shopping centers 23 years ago, the last thing you wanted were tables, chairs, benches, anything comfortable.
Yeah.
Because you want to see people with bags in their hands and going into stores, and that was I mean, if you had to, you turned the ledge of a fountain into a seating area. But really, you didn't want people spending time out in the common areas. You wanted people in store spending money. That's completely the opposite now. And I think that's been a fairly sort of gradual change as the open air centers have become the most profitable. If you go, from the Grove to Americana to Oak Brook Center in Chicago, those are some of the highest grossing centers in the world. And they don't depend on weather at all. They depend on the feeling you get when you're there and the amount of amenities. I always use Oak Brook Center in Chicago. I think they're having a huge sleet storm right now as we speak. But they built these little glass houses in the common areas for people to sit in when it's 0 degrees. So you can still shop outside, still go in to every store, but you need to warm up.
Of course.
And they have little kiosks inside for hot chocolate, and there's a Starbucks coffee kind of attached to one of them. That level of come spend time, we're going to make it easier for you to spend time, is the exact opposite of what retail used to do, which was all about a transactional monetary transactional experience, not a relationship building, trying to make it feel like this is your place, this is your third place, this is community. That's the biggest change in the last 20 years.
And the stores themselves are starting to represent that
Every
same
store.
mentality, right? So it's no longer a sort of transactional experience, and in the same way that hotels have dropped their podiums, a lot of them have, or at least provide an alternate option for self check-in or a concierge desk. Retailers are doing the exact same thing. Apple's sort of the premier leader of that direction, but ultimately everyone's doing it, and you walk in and it's not unlike the Tiffany's experience, where you have an ambassador of the brand that comes and greets you and walks you through, and when you check out, it's a seamless kind of interaction that you didn't feel like they took your money. Oh, did I make a mistake? Right? So I think I shouldn't have bought that. That was terrible, and I felt pressured, and the line was long.
That's the worst feeling in the world. When you walk out and you're like, oh God, what did I just do? I was speaking to an executive at one of the big mall companies, and I asked him, what's the future? What do you think the future is? And he said, well, for men anyway, it's that front of house experience, and everything should be like going to a bar, going to a cigar or a sports bar. Branded sodas, branded beers, branded vodkas, whatever it is, to make you feel like it's your place and you feel comfortable. And oh, by the way, I dropped $200 on a pair of jeans, or whatever it is. And I think that Shinola is one that comes to mind, that has been doing it for quite a while. That you walk in and they have a Shinola Cola or a Shinola beer, and your first thought is, how much does that cost? And it's like, don't worry about it. And then all of a sudden, oh, okay, I don't have to spend anything, or I could. I think that's, again, like the tiniest little thing, and it doesn't cost that much money for the retailer to provide those things, and it has got to pay off. I mean, I know it does.
It's bragging rights. That when people go in and they can talk about that story, that interaction.
I'm telling this story, you're telling the story of Tiffany, and we are telling that word of mouth is for our business is obviously number one source of business, and for every retailer. I mean, a bad experience also can be the exact opposite. It can be the death knell of a restaurant, especially if you feel like you were treated poorly or you were ignored, is kind of the worst.
Well, thing. Yelp has made everyone a critic.
The Yelp effect is pretty scary.
It is. It can definitely
it's up the game.
Do a lot.
Social media, period. When people take a picture of their every action they make and put it on social media, that means that every landlord and retailer has to up their game, because it's going to be photographed or written about as a negative if it's not a good experience.
Yeah, as someone who used to work in retail up until the last couple of years, you guys are talking a lot about, it's not just the amenities, not just, I get a champagne or whatever when I walk in. It's definitely also the people. And, for me, when I used to work in retail, I worked at a makeup store, and I think that, to me, maybe it's also because I'm a woman, but I feel like beauty has been very good with merging that hospitality aspect with retail as well, because, you want to come into the store and you want to try on the products in person. You want to, and my favorite kind of customer would be someone who would come in and be like, I don't know anything. Please tell me what to do. And I'm like, okay, I will hold your hand through everything. And it's just, me personally, I definitely enjoy when someone comes in and they're, even if they don't end up purchasing anything, but they're just curious and they are willing to kind of take your suggestions. And you do want to make them feel welcome, because even if they don't purchase anything now, you want them to remember the experience and be able to come back later.
Right. And you're touching on something I think is really important too, that I feel hospitality has certainly informed retail, and vice versa, is this sort of, I always tell my clients, don't forget about the goodbye. So I think a lot of hotels and a lot of retail experiences do forget about the goodbye. They get you in, they make the sale, and then let's go, you're out, right? Checkout is whenever, and so going back to Tiffany's, it's a handwritten note. It's this beautiful little envelope saying thank you, and hotels have caught on to that, and it's this sort of this takeaway moment that makes it, that just seals the deal. It's that that beautiful wax stamp that says, you participated.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming by. It's
I was just thinking about
critical.
banking, the Capital One lounges. They obviously have learned a lot from hospitality and realized that banking's an much like buying makeup would be for me, an intimidating experience for a lot of people. This is money, and they're going to check your credit, and there's a lot
Makes
of
people nervous,
stress.
yeah.
So putting someone at a comfortable chair with a coffee and having a banker come to you, because it's all on a device anyway, and making that sort of transaction feel much more sort of comfortable in your voice, the acoustics are better. I think that the space that's still not been really disrupted fully is car sales. That's still a terrible experience, and
even with the big car vending machine.
no, that's pretty cool. I don't know how that works, but when I moved to LA, I bought my first car through a broker who took away all the friction, basically. But I kind of missed actually the test drive process, the talk about it on just a little bit, but don't talk down to me process. So I think there are still some retail outlets, so to speak, that are ripe for some disruption.
Yeah. I mean, I just bought a car last year, and, that process when you're sitting there waiting to get all the papers and everything, it's just kind of like,
can I get you a little tiny bottle of water?
They just give you, we got a bottle of water, and that's fine, but...
but this is a huge purchase. You should get a lot more than that.
Yeah.
You should leave there feeling... Every car I've ever bought in a showroom, I thought, oh man, what we were talking about earlier, I think that was a mistake.
Buyer's remorse.
Yeah, you're like, oh, I spent too much. They talked me into the window tinting or whatever it is. Yep. It's a terrible
feeling. And that
feeling.
pressure,
And that has not yet been fixed. And Tesla, with sort of their process, which a lot of states have kind of blocked that. I think that doing it all online is not the answer either. There's some sort of interaction so you can ask questions and go through the features of this vehicle, but then also not get all of the sort of negatives, the pre-vetting, and whether that's through some screening you've done before, or if you've input 95% of the information prior, whatever that is, however that manifests itself. I think that experience can be made a lot better.
Yeah,
still,
definitely, I 100% agree. But so now we've kind of talked about how hospitality has influenced retail. Now, what about on the flip side? So how has retail influenced the hospitality industry?
Great question. It hasn't at all. I think one of the biggest challenges that I've seen is, and I think that it's hand in hand with retail as well, is this sort of labor model, right? So we're talking about the notion of service and how important that is for a sustainable model for both retail and for hospitality. But with that comes a price. So you're paying people more, you're training them more, you're trying to retain them more. So there's a larger overhead associated with all that. So I would say that hospitality is learning from retail in terms of how they are hybridizing their service offerings. So you'll have a barista who's also the person that's checking you in, for example. You have sort of the local concierge who's hooked into the scene, that also is your sort of personal shopper. Yeah. Right? They are multitasking, but also combining these services with the idea of having a reduced labor model. Okay. And that's a tricky balance.
Tricky.
Yeah, that is.
I personally don't love mixing sort of the bar scene with the check-in experience. That was pretty trendy for a while, and it can work for most people, but I've talked a lot of my clients out of it, because the first interaction you have with the hotel shouldn't be inclusive of the day drinkers, or somebody that you don't want part of that experience, or if you have a special request, or your children are with you, or if you have a drinking problem. I mean, the last thing you want to do is walk up to the bar to check in. So all these things need to be thought out. While it's a cool idea, and it should be an option, I don't think it should be the only option for a hotel.
Would you say that would be more of like a niche hotel type of thing? Like maybe there's a hotel brand out there that's what they're known for, and so the people who book that hotel, when they book it, they're aware. Definitely. This hotel is known for this kind of experience.
Like Ace, which is a very different experience, and they built their brand around that experience of not knowing, again, sort of like the Chicago Athletics, not really knowing what you're walking into. Is this a party? And then, if you're lucky enough to get a real room at an Ace Hotel, not a bunk bed room, it's still kind of a weird hybrid experience. But I think that if you don't know, that's a weird experience. I knew the first 2 Aces I went to what to expect, and I would very much fulfill what I was looking for in that. But if you're thinking Marriott, standard Marriott, that's not, you're going to feel out of place.
And that's the real challenge for all the brands, is that the whole point of carrying a brand flag is that there is some consistency across the brand, so that their guests are knowing what they're getting to a certain degree, and the point system can carry through. So they have to sort of be a little more ubiquitous, and while they're sort of offering a lifestyle, I hate that word, by the way, lifestyle, because not having a lifestyle is a lifestyle. But this sort of lifestyle brand that offers these unique amenities as a destination has to be factored into this formula, right? So it doesn't, for me, it doesn't quite feel authentic. It's sort of spoon feeding the notion of what's cool to people, and that works for a lot of people. It's fine. This is great, But I think that today's guest is a little more sophisticated and looking for something a little deeper.
Yeah. No, 100%. So, what do you guys think of, like, hotels incorporating actual retail spaces? Not just a gift shop, like, having full-on pop-up shops or things like that. I've been seeing a little bit about that in the news as well.
You're seeing a lot more of it. I think hotels are also recognizing there's an opportunity to sell product within the rooms.
Yeah.
I don't want to name drop any brands right now, I get myself in trouble, but that's happening more and more, and those kinds of partnerships are going to continue to happen. So you can go and you can sleep on that bed and you say, oh, I love it, and here's the link to how to buy it, or it gets delivered however they want to package that, including the amenities and the spaces in the public areas as well.
So I stayed at a hotel in Denver recently, the Maven, and it's called the Maven at Dairy Block, and it's near the stadium, near the ball field, and it has a food hall. It has some retail in the base. It has restaurants, which they give you 2 little wooden chips for each day when you check in, and you can use those as a discount or as a free burrito at a little Airstream that's in the lobby. Then there's a full-on food hall attached to it. The room was nice. The room was fine. But that was such a great thing, especially because it was cold outside. I went downstairs and just hung out. I got an ice cream. I went back to my room. I went back and got another ice cream in one case. Because it was like, I don't want to be in my room. I want to be down here. This is a cool thing. There are a lot of people doing a lot of different things. There are all ages. There were serious bars. There were, ice cream bar. There were different everything you would want in a food hall was kind of attached, and it felt like this completely seamless thing because they're giving you little chips to go shop in any of the vendors in the whole food hall to get a discount or something free, which felt really generous and nice. And it was an expensive room, so it wasn't exactly altruistic, but it was supporting the retail, supporting the hospitality, and back. Yeah, exactly what you're saying. It's sort of their synergistic, I guess.
And Sean, I think you can expand on this more than I can, but I know that Simon is partnering with Marriott and Westfield's doing similar things where they're building hotels, they're pairing hotels with shopping centers. Yeah. And so they're also sharing amenities and offering the same kind of, I wouldn't say token, but these sort of discounts to shop within the center that they're attached to. And the notion of having hotel guests there and bringing 200 to 400 credit cards on site every single day is a very promising thing.
I think one thing to point out, and we've fallen into this trap a lot, is we're also talking about fairly exclusive experiences. I think that when the brands, which much better, Jackson, when the brands down their whole sort of price point line start giving those sorts of experiences, I think that would be extremely valuable, because I do think a lot of people feel very sort of put off by that experience. Because they're not used to it. So sort of educating people that hotel experience should be open to everyone. Anybody can come into this space, not just the people who are paying $400 a night, staying above. And that's a very delicate balance. And I feel like the Maven in Denver did a good job with sort of like, the Airstream, kind of like made it feel pop in a way. And then having, sort of really cheap food offerings as well as some really high-end clothing. kind of balanced that a little bit, but I still felt like this is a little rarefied. This is a little at the top. That's not 1%, but the top 10% experience.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I definitely agree about that. That hotels should be open experiences for other people or at least the common spaces, not necessarily the rooms. There was actually something that I tried last year called Resort Pass, and it allows you to pretty much make use of a hotel's pool. You pay like a small fee and you get to, pretty much make use of the hotel's pool and have access to some of their amenities without actually having to stay at the hotel. So that was an interesting experience.
I've never done that, but I've seen that offering, and a lot of times the hotel pool is a weird thing too.
Yeah.
Like, people don't, if it's guests, businessmen don't necessarily, it'd be a bunch of businessmen at the pool. So having different age groups, at least it sort of democratizes that space a little bit more.
It finds a way to actionize it too, right?
It can be a dead zone, but if you've got,
But the challenge with those things is always security, right?
Oh, yeah.
Hotels have to provide a level of security which is, impenetrable in many ways. So you've got a lot of female travelers, male travelers, solo travelers that, are targets. And when you infuse your lobby with a lot of anyone, it can create issues.
Yeah, I thought about that when I was staying at that hotel. Like, this is borderline. These people are getting a little close to my room.
Yeah.
It doesn't bother me because I'm not frightened, but it definitely could if I was traveling.
But back to your point, so if you kind of know that brand and you know what you're signing up for, then there's more of a comfort level.
Yeah.
But if it's the only offering in town, if there's a convention or something, and that's the only hotel you can book, that was not your expectation.
Yeah.
It could be a challenge.
Yeah, it can definitely be. Yeah, it can definitely be an interesting experience.
You're saying that there's this need to be generic enough that it's appealing to an extremely wide swath, unless you're a niche-y and you're just aiming at trendy people. I've always found that very challenging. That's what shopping centers also can't get too cute, because some people don't like that.
Yes.
And so that some people, segment of the populations, have a lot of money too. So it seems like you're kind of always playing to a lowest common denominator so that nobody can get uncomfortable or offended. But the places that we're all talking about are special experiences.
Yeah.
So I don't know in hospitality especially, I don't know. And in retail, that's, I think, why malls, one of the major reasons malls have died.
Yeah.
They were all the same experience. It was all JCPenney, Macy's, Dillard's, you name it. You fill in the blanks.
2 or 3 anchors.
Yeah,
and
same stores, Claire's, the Spencer Gifts, and, Banana Republic, Gap, Victoria's Secret. Everywhere, beige tile, white ceilings with some skylights. At Christmas, they would do something, sort of unique. But really only at the holidays did it feel like it was kind of this is cool.
Yeah.
The rest of it was an incredibly white bread bland experience, and that was just fine for the 60s through the 80s.
Yeah.
Really. And then I think technology, when we started seeing the rest of the world on our phones, we started expecting a lot from landlords and developers. And Caruso does the best of any of them, really, of giving the customer, from the time they park their car, go down the elevator, this concierge experience like you're a special person. And he has defaulted to kind of a historical reference.
Yeah.
Because that does have mass appeal. I think it gets tired for a lot of people, but
everyone wants to feel special.
They do. Everybody deserves to feel special. And that mall experience, that bland beige experience, didn't make anybody feel special.
Yeah.
It didn't make anybody feel unspecial either. It just was this, neutral. And I think that when you look at, Shaheen Sadehi and the lab and the camp down in Costa Mesa, those are quirky as heck.
Yeah.
And it works.
Yeah. Even for me, coming from a marketing background, if there's anything that I've learned in the last few years, all the experts will say, it's okay to be hyper specific and to really niche down. You don't need to market to everyone because you're never going to be able to market to everyone. So you might as well have an ideal customer in mind, and that will work, and it will appeal to people. Something like the lab.
It's I would love if I could build on that a little bit. I'm seeing it in the hotel industry a lot, but the the notion of partnering and representing higher goals, right? Whether those are community focused or environmental focused, it's what do you represent and who are you aligning with?
Yeah.
And it can be polarizing. So a lot of the bigger brands are we can't go down that path. And I get that, but some of the boutique brands are saying,
Yeah.
we're gonna take a stance on homelessness. I'm working with a brand right now, Artist Guild Hotels, and we're trying to figure out, they want to donate to the homeless cause,
Yeah.
an initiative, and they've got a target number they want to reach, and so for every room they rent, they'll be putting money toward that cause.
Wow, that's amazing.
And it's incredible, right? But they're going beyond that, because that's not a new idea,
Yeah.
but they're going beyond in terms of setting a target goal, right? Not like Kickstarter or something, setting a target goal, but then also sort of how do they actionize it within the community. So that's an empowering thing, and it's not going to be for everyone.
Yeah.
But instead of giving me points for an upgrade to another crappy room or something I don't need, I'd rather my points go toward the next playground for this community, or to a homelessness initiative or something like that. So I think that's exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Is this sort of that's the differentiator. That's the disruptor. How are you going to make a difference, and what is your statement? Because today's guest expects that.
Yeah. And, being part of the millennial generation, I think my generation in particular, like, we definitely are very conscious, and we definitely like to be conscious of where we put our money. Who is our money going to exactly? Like, supporting a more boutique brand versus a large corporation, or...
Well, I think that's why Lyft, Uber, Airbnb, you're actually... It's a person. It's not you don't even have to do any research at all. It's that guy driving the car or the person that you're using their home. And often when you do an Airbnb, there's some artifacts from that person's life are in that house. And that's your generation really that has driven that,
the consciousness. And
and it's a sharing thing, but I think that it's two-way street. I mean, it's also the owner of whether it's a hotel or a retail store sharing back. And I think that's fantastic. I didn't know about the homeless thing. I think that's excellent. Yeah. I remember back about, 10 years ago, I bought a carbon offset for every flight. It was a program through, I don't even know if it was through our travel agent. And you could pay a little extra to offset your carbon footprint on this flight. And it wasn't very much, $5 or $8. And you got a little luggage tag. And I mean, that luggage tag cost 12 cents to make, but I paid whatever, a couple $100 over a year. But I felt great about it. I felt really good that I was doing something to offset this business travel that I have to do. And that was a long time ago and just a little bit. So I'm sure there are a lot of good examples of that. Your generation really driving these sorts of narrative where you spend your money should mean something more than just flushing it down the toilet.
Yeah. And not being afraid to use your dollar to make a statement as well. Yeah. Kind of like what you're saying, how even though, brands taking a stance on any particular issue is not going to be for everyone. And of course, there's always going to be people who, for a number of reasons are going to disagree on why they think corporations or brands should be speaking on certain issues. But there's also a large group of people, myself included, who are willing to be like, no, I'm glad that this brand is taking this stance because now I know that I want to support them. Or, you know what? I'm glad that this brand is saying this because I'm like, I don't want to support them. And,
exactly.
And, that's...
And that'll stay with you, I guess, your whole life, right? I mean, when they build a loyal customer or a customer that's not loyal, and you're going to tell like we talked about the service experience, you're going to tell your friends are going to tell their friends, and a like-minded group, which is a huge buying power, will sort of follow a brand as it matures.
Yeah.
But it's so funny you're touching on something that the very corporations and the very people are saying that they don't want to do that are in fact making a stance.
Yeah.
Right? They're saying
that is
not
their stance.
Going to represent that. That is my stance. Right. So it is not just a trend. I think it's just the way of the future, and
I agree.
The sooner people adopt it and recognize it, the better off they're going to be.
No, I agree 100%. That was great. That was really great. But let's kind of shift gears a little bit and let's talk a little bit about tech specifically. because obviously it's taking over our lives. And something that, Jackson, you had mentioned when we had initially talked about this was that you had said that true luxury is going to be getting away from tech. Mm-hmm. And, you guys are both designers. How can we as designers facilitate that? Or is that even something that we should be taking charge of or leading the way in? Because, self-care is a big thing, and, because social media in particular is so pervasive and it's always in our minds, what does that look like in the design process, if you want to design true luxury?
Well, I think so. The purpose of technology, bottom line, is to give us more time to enjoy our lives. I mean, that is what technology should be a vehicle for, and that's what all technologies have been. The assembly line was not necessarily for that, but it resulted in a middle class who had time and money to spend with their families that never was allowed before. So invisible tech, I mean, I think that, the block downtown where we have an office has this robot thing that runs around, and people avoid it. Like, people take a picture from a distance.
What is it supposed to do?
It's a concierge, but it looks like
it answers questions like Siri or Alexa or something?
Yeah, and can give you directions to the metro, but it's freaky and nobody wants to deal with it. So that gave me pause. I mean, like, when I saw it, I thought, oh, that's cool, and then I thought, everyone's walking away from it. And I was like, good. We are not going to go that direction where we want a robot to tell me what to do. If it was a kiosk that you interacted with, I think interaction would be great.
Yeah.
But the weird, I'm a robot person.
It's a little daunting.
Yeah, well, it's just not it's weird and not real. If that was invisible tech where it popped up on my phone, the concierge said, hey, we noticed you're here. How can I help you? That's a better experience. So in that sense, sort of AI, which is really just data collection, and winnowing our choices down to what is a little more in the range of what we're looking for. Mm-hmm. I think it can get, we talked about this earlier, it can get a little creepy if it knows your middle name and knows your blood type and starts to get a little too into your business. But that's all there. Something I've been writing about, and I know you've read, the light bulbs in all of our retail spaces have Bluetooth, and they can pinpoint where our phones are within about a 3-inch diameter.
Wow.
So let's get over the fact that may seem creepy, but what they're actually doing, they don't know who you are. They only know what your activity is. So they're able to drive you deeper into their store. So if everybody's sort of milling around this one, sort of end cap, they just pull that into the store and lead you deeper in so that you're passing by more product. That's a win-win. You're getting to see more stuff, and you're still getting to kind of have the experience that you want to have. So from a retail technology standpoint, I think this sort of invisible technology that's informing the architects and designers and the store operations how to make it a more seamless, more comfortable experience, I think it can sort of full stop at that. And then when it creeps into the robots talking, I think we're not there, and I don't know that we want to be there.
Okay.
That's interesting. And thanks for remembering that quote. I think one of the things, I'll never forget this story. When it happened to me, I was waiting, had a layover in O'Hare, I was trying to get back to LA, and I started talking to this guy who's a musician, and he was actually coming to LA to record with Ben Harper, and we were talking tattoos and exchanging stories. It was great. And then he pulled out his phone, and he had this old, like, it was like one of the early cell phones. Like, it was
like
full,
the brick? Oh, like a flip phone.
Flip phone with a pull-out antenna. The
whole
thing
really?
Was cracked
Wow.
pieces. This thing was ancient, dirty, like not what you expect.
Oh my
from a guy like
gosh.
this, right? And he was just laughing. He says, "Yeah, I got a buddy of mine said that I finally hit the pinnacle of luxury with this phone." And I was like, "Oh, that's funny." He says, "No, really, that's sort of it's become an icon of luxury because," he said, "if you've got a smartphone and you're always accessible, you're somebody's slave." And I'll never forget that.
Yeah.
Huh. Yeah.
So he reaches people when he wants to.
Yeah.
And he gives the number that he wants, but he doesn't check his email. He's not on there surfing the web and doing whatever. Probably can't even take a good picture with it, honestly. So that always resonated with me. Is like, wow, what a great way to look at that. And so, I mean, more and more hotels are doing it. They have these sort of digital detoxes and all of that. It's hard for us to give up our phones.
Oh, yeah.
I'm working with a bar designer right now, and the notion is to do this sort of Faraday cage around the bar so that no phones will work. Just to see, as almost like a social experiment, to see how people will really interact if they're not worried about having a picture made or somebody blowing them up or getting texted, right? This sort of freedom associated with that, which I think is a wonderful idea.
Yeah.
And then technology can be overused, particularly in hotels. I think going back to that sort of labor model conversation earlier, where hotels were like, great, we can do a digital concierge, we can have self check-in, we can have some robot handle our luggage. You don't even have to talk to a person; you just go straight to your room. I've stayed in those hotels, and it is the coldest experience
I'd
you will
imagine.
ever have. It's a little frightening, not unlike the robot that's chasing Sean around the block. It's just, I didn't see anyone, I didn't talk to anyone, and people are scurrying around in the shadows. It's a different experience. There's always going to be a place for it to self check in.
Yeah.
Business travelers are going to want that, but I think hospitality forgot that they need to be hospitable, and that's the root of the industry.
Yeah.
And the same thing for retail.
Yeah. I mean, I get it, like, making things easier and things like that, but yeah, like, there's nothing like having a real person. Just like when you need to call your bank or your credit card and you get that recording and you're like, I just want to talk to somebody real. Nothing is going to beat it. So, yeah, I agree with all of that.
So as you know, my wife, you guys, I'm expecting in May, our second, and as a result, she's having a hard time getting out and about, right? So she's relying on Amazon a little more. So we're having a lot of deliveries, and online shopping can be great, but at the same time, it's really awful in that you order more than you would have.
Oh yeah.
Right? You order 4 of something to make sure one of them works.
Yeah.
And you end up with all these boxes of things you have to ship back, and it's and there's no customer service associated with it. And in so many ways, it's made your life a little more difficult, and the carbon footprint that's creating, I can't even imagine. But the notion of taking hospitality and human interaction out of these experiences it's just not going to work. It's failable.
Yeah, I think we've hit maximum. Amazon will never be bigger than it is today in a retail world. It's kind of hit the max. And they know that. That's why they've gotten into physical stores with Whole Foods. That's why their cloud storage is actually their number one revenue generator. They never really made a lot of money. And I think the backlash is what you just described. I think that we have all hit this wall of, I just could have gone to a store and gotten exactly what I wanted. Instead, I have 8 boxes. And what a pain. And, and some people who have a shopping addiction, it's probably a lot of fun, but or weird kind of fun. But I think for most of us, this, like, my favorite saying, and it was at a store in the Bay Area: buy fewer, better things. A great pair of jeans can last a lifetime, quite seriously. It just gets better looking with age. I can't think of many things I've bought online that were the favorite thing I've ever had.
Yeah.
Mostly it's like staple type stuff, which that'll still be a good use, especially when someone can't get out of their home or is not, in inclement weather areas. Toilet paper, those sorts of things, sure. But a beautiful blouse or a great pair of jeans, why would you do that online?
I've had suits made online, and I've had suits made by tailor in person, and I'm just telling you, that they're light years apart. Yeah. They may fit the same, but the experience was completely different.
Yeah, you sort of love the suit that someone made for you, and you sort of have a like relationship with the one that a computer did for you. But
I could cut my hair at home, but I'd rather go have the experience of having a shave and have
those of you with hair.
No, nothing is going to beat that in-person experience. I mean, kind of like we were saying, I will always prefer to go in person. As much as I love Amazon and the convenience of it, like, I will always try to go in person.
Like, I wonder how perfume sales work online. Isn't that something you just can't, like, you could describe the perfume to me, but I mean, what if it stinks?
Yeah.
You're not going to replace that experience.
That's why, like, beauty has done so well. I mean, I know beauty nowadays, like, a lot of the beauty brands have apps where you can test drive the makeup on your face now. But, I mean, in terms of retail, like, I think the beauty industry has been able to stay on top of it just
Yeah.
because of
It's
the
so
just because of
personal.
the nature of it. Yeah, it's so
It's
personal.
the
Like,
closest thing to you that there is.
yeah,
It's funny, when Uniqlo opened in San Francisco, they sort of had a bad launch in the United States. I think it was in the early 2000s, and they went into malls and nobody knew who they were, and they kind of pulled back. So when they relaunched, it was all about brand awareness. They had this funny mirror where you could put on a green jacket, like a green screen, and then you could dial what color. But you're standing in the middle of all the product. So it's like, or I could just put it on. And they took it out. It didn't last very long. And they realized the real beauty is putting the jacket on.
yeah,
And looking at yourself in the mirror with the real color. That technology can't replace that. It didn't. And luckily, it was probably for them a very small, sort of investment.
yeah,
And it was out.
yeah.
After a year, it was out. It was dumb.
I think if there's anything I've learned from this conversation is that people are always going to be the central point of retail and hospitality, like that human interaction more than anything. Like, yes, like amenities and amenities matter and things like that, but I think it sounds like it's really all about the people.
Yeah.
Yeah, without us, without people, it's
I mean,
nothing.
it literally is nothing, but yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so one last question for both of you. Do you foresee retail and hospitality ever becoming one and the same? And if not, what will always remain a distinction for each industry?
I think they already are the same.
They're pretty.
It's retail is consumerism, right? However that translates, I think it gets the stigma of it's product on a shelf. I'm going to give you X, and you're going to give me that thing. But we are selling experiences. That's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
So they are one and the same for me. It's consumerism.
Yeah, I mean, I think in the same way that there can be a sort of crappy hospitality experience, there can be a crappy retail experience. And the goal on both is exactly the same, to increase the touches with the heart, grabbing at people's sort of hearts and stomachs and where, their souls. And you want exactly the same thing.
And you want them to come back.
And you want them to
tell their friends.
feel like they had a memorable experience, but more than that, a commemorable experience. So the selfie is the most commemorative thing you can do. So you want people interacting with your spaces, whether it be hospitality or retail. You want people feeling like that. I remember it and I took a picture because it was so important. And both, it doesn't matter. Either one of those sectors, so to speak. I mean, we try and divide them out, but they're also, interiors and architecture are the same thing also.
Yeah.
They just deal in slightly different shades of gray.
Well, this was a really great conversation. Thank you so much for talking with me about this.
Thanks,
I
Crystal.
really
This was fun.
enjoyed it.
Sorry, we've been eluding you a little bit. You've been very persistent, so thank you.
No, that's totally fine.
We should always have two people talking.
I'm glad that we were able to make this happen.
Yeah, we are too.
Thanks.
Thank you. And that was our show for this week. Thank you so much once again, Jackson and Sean, for being part of it. And I hope you all were able to take something away from today's conversation. Until next time, I'll see you soon.